welcome to the deep dive. I think it's safe to say you're all here because you want to get the most out of your learning, right? You want to understand how to be more efficient, how to really absorb new information, and today we're going straight to the source.
Absolutely. We're talking about your brain, and to help us unpack all of this, we're going to be taking a deep dive into a TEDx talk by Dr. Laura Boyd. She's a brain researcher at the University of British Columbia.
It's really a fascinating talk. It's like having a direct conversation with your own brain. So if you're ready to unlock the secrets of how you learn and how you can learn better, then let's dive right in.
I'm ready.
All right. So the big takeaway here, the thing we really want you to walk away with from this deep dive, is the idea that every time you learn something new, whether it's a fact, a skill, anything really, you are physically changing your brain.
You're actually rewiring it. This incredible ability is called neuroplasticity, and it's something that Dr. Boyd has spent her career studying.
You know, it's funny because for so long, we had this very fixed view of the brain. It was like, okay, you reach a certain age, childhood's over, and that's it. Your brain is basically set.
Yeah, and Dr. Boyd really challenges that notion. The research just doesn't support that anymore.
And remember that whole thing about humans only using like 10% of their brains?
Oh, yeah. Complete myth. Totally debunked by modern imaging technology like MRI. Your brain is active all the time, even when you're sleeping.
Yeah, it never really shuts off. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. And this whole concept of neuroplasticity, it's not just some abstract scientific idea. It has real-world implications for how we learn, how we adapt, even how we recover from injuries.
That's exactly what makes it so important for this deep dive.
So let's get down to the nitty-gritty. How does your brain actually change when you learn?
Well, Dr. Boyd outlines 3 fundamental ways these changes occur. And the first is on a chemical level.
Chemical changes.
Exactly. Imagine this. Every time you learn something new, the communication pathways in your brain are essentially getting an upgrade. The chemical signals between your neurons, those brain cells, become stronger and more efficient. It's like turning up the volume on your brain's communication network.
Okay, so it's like amplifying the signal.
Exactly. These chemical changes can happen pretty quickly, and they're really important for short-term memory and those initial improvements you see when you first try a new skill.
It's like when you meet someone new and they tell you their name. You can hold on to it for a few minutes. You might even repeat it back to them to try to make it stick.
Right, but then, later that day, you completely blank. You can't recall it to save your life.
That's happened to me so many times.
It's those chemical changes at play. You're getting a quick boost in memory, but for that name, or any new information really, to become truly embedded in your long-term memory, something more profound needs to occur.
So what happens next? How do we move from those fleeting memories to something more permanent?
That brings us to the second way your brain changes, which is structurally. And this is where things get really interesting.
Structurally.
This involves actual physical changes in the connections between your brain cells. It's like your brain is rewiring itself to accommodate this new learning.
Wait, so we're talking about actual physical changes in the brain?
Absolutely. These structural changes take more time and effort than the chemical ones, but they are the foundation of long-term memory and lasting skill development.
Okay, so if I want to learn a new language or master a new sport, it's not just about memorizing vocabulary or practicing the moves. I actually need to physically change my brain.
Precisely. Dr. Boyd uses the examples of playing the piano or juggling. When you first start out, you might see some quick progress. That's the chemical changes happening. But to really become proficient for those finger movements or juggling patterns to become almost second nature, your brain needs to physically strengthen the neural pathways involved. It's like building a new, more efficient highway in your brain.
I love that analogy. So it's like those early wins, those initial improvements, they're great for motivation, but they're not the whole story. To really get to a point of mastery, we need to be patient and allow those structural changes to happen.
Exactly. And remember, the chemical and structural changes, they're not happening in isolation. They're actually working together in a really intricate dance.
Okay, so we've got the chemical changes for those initial gains, then the structural changes for long-term learning. What's the third way our brains adapt?
The third way is functionally. This is all about how different regions of your brain become more excitable and how they interact with each other as you use them.
Okay, so how does that translate to me, the listener, trying to learn something new?
Think of it like this. Let's say you're learning new language. As you practice, certain pathways in your brain related to language processing become more well-worn and accessible. It's like a path in the woods. The more you walk it, the clearer and easier it becomes to follow.
So the more I use those pathways, the easier it becomes for my brain to access them.
Precisely. And these functional changes actually lead to shifts in how and when different parts of your brain work together to perform tasks. It's like different regions are becoming more synchronized and coordinated.
So it's not just about one part of the brain lighting up, it's about the whole brain working together in a more efficient way.
Exactly. Learning is a whole brain endeavor. And all three of these changes, the chemical, the structural, and the functional, they're often happening in concert, supporting each other to help you learn and adapt.
Wow. It's really a symphony of activity happening in our brains every time we learn something new. And I bet you have some real-world examples of these structural changes in action, right?
Yes,
Something
Jim.
tangible that people can really grasp.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Boyd gives some fantastic examples. Let's take someone who's blind and reads Braille. Studies have shown that the area of their brain dedicated to processing touch in their fingers, what we call the hand sensory area, is actually significantly larger compared to sighted individuals who don't read Braille.
That's so cool. So because they're relying so heavily on their sense of touch to read, their brains have literally adapted to make that sense more acute.
Exactly. And another example is right at your fingertips, literally. Think about your own dominant hand. The motor cortex, the part of your brain that controls movement, is actually larger in the hemisphere that controls your dominant hand.
Really. So the more I use my right hand, the bigger that part of my brain becomes.
It's pretty incredible, isn't it? More use leads to a physically larger and more capable brain region. And then there's those famous studies on London taxi drivers. They have to memorize this incredibly intricate map of the city to get their license.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Their spatial memory must be off the charts.
And their brains reflect that. Research has shown that these taxi drivers have a larger hippocampus, a brain region crucial for spatial memory, than the general population.
So all of these examples, the Braille readers, the dominant hand, the taxi drivers, are all demonstrating how our behaviors, how we use our brains, can literally reshape their structure.
Exactly. It's fascinating, isn't it? You're literally molding your brain every day.
It is. But it also begs the question, if our brains are so remarkably adaptable, why is learning sometimes so hard? Why do we forget things? Why don't people always make a full recovery after a brain injury, like a stroke? What are the limits, and what helps facilitate this neuroplasticity?
Those are some of the biggest questions in neuroscience. And those are the very questions that drive Dr. Boyd's research, particularly when it comes to understanding stroke recovery. As she points out, while medical advancements have significantly reduced the number of deaths from stroke, the number of people living with long-term disabilities as a result of stroke, well, that number is still a huge societal challenge. And figuring out how to best support neurological recovery, it's a major focus of ongoing research.
So there's still a lot we don't know, but what are some of the key findings from Dr. Boyd's work that can help us better understand how we learn and adapt?
Well, one of the most significant findings, and this is especially relevant for you, the learner, is that behavior is the most powerful driver of neuroplastic change. You can't just take a pill and instantly rewire your brain. The most effective way to change your brain is to actively engage in the behaviors you want to learn or relearn.
It sounds so simple, but it's profound. It's really about taking action, isn't it?
It is. It's about consciously choosing to engage in activities that challenge your brain and push you outside your comfort zone. And here's something really interesting. Dr. Boyd's research suggests that increased effort and even struggle during practice, that can actually lead to more learning and greater structural changes in your brain.
So it's not about finding the easiest way to do something. It's about embracing the challenge.
Exactly. Sometimes that struggle, that feeling of, this is hard, that's a sign that your brain is really working, that is making new connections. Now, it's also important to understand that neuroplasticity isn't always a good thing. I mean, it can have some negative consequences too.
Negative consequences, how so?
Well, think about forgetting. Forgetting something you once knew, that's a form of neuroplasticity. And the brain changes involved in addiction or chronic pain, those are also examples of neuroplasticity at work, but in a way that's not beneficial.
Okay, so our brains are constantly adapting, but not always in ways that serve us.
Precisely. That's why it's so important to be mindful of our habits and behaviors. Now, this whole idea of how our brains change differently, it's what led Dr. Boyd to research personalized learning.
Personalized learning.
Yeah. There's that popular notion that it takes roughly 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert at anything. But Dr. Boyd's research shows that it's not really that simple. The way each person's brain is wired, how it responds to learning, is so unique that a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work. What might take one person years to master, another person might pick up in a fraction of the time.
So everyone learns at their own pace.
Exactly. And that's where personalized medicine comes in. You've probably heard of personalized medicine in the context of cancer treatment.
Yeah, where therapies are tailored to a patient's specific genetic makeup.
Right. And Dr. Boyd is finding that the same concept applies to brain recovery and learning. There are specific characteristics of an individual's brain structure and function, what we call biomarkers, that can help predict how they'll respond to different types of therapy or learning strategies.
Okay, so by understanding these unique brain signatures, we can potentially tailor interventions to be much more effective, whether it's for someone recovering from a stroke or someone trying to learn a new language.
Exactly. Personalized learning can revolutionize how we approach education and rehabilitation. And it can even help explain why some people naturally excel in certain areas, like music or math, while others might struggle.
So much of it comes down to how our individual brains are wired. And it brings us to Dr. Boyd's final point, and this is a powerful one. Your brain is changing right now as you listen to this deep dive. Simply by engaging with this information, your brain is different now than it was when you started.
It's incredible, isn't it? And those changes, that specific pattern of change, is unique to you. Understanding that variability, how each person's brain responds to learning differently, that's going to be essential for the future of neuroscience, education, and rehabilitation.
It really emphasizes the fact that we're all lifelong learners. Our brains are constantly evolving and adapting.
So if we want to sum up the key takeaway from this deep dive, it's this. Your brain is incredibly plastic. It's constantly being shaped by your experiences, your actions, and your behaviors.
And that understanding comes with a call to action, doesn't it? We need to be more aware of the things we're doing that are supporting healthy brain function, and we need to be actively trying to break habits that might not be so beneficial.
Absolutely. Learning isn't passive. It takes effort. It takes engagement. And while the most effective strategies will vary from person to person, one thing remains constant. Consistent, focused practice is essential for driving meaningful change in your brain.
So as we wrap up, I want you to think about this. Your brain is a dynamic, ever-evolving organ. What are you doing to shape it? How are you learning best? And how can you be more intentional about building the brain you want?
It's an exciting journey, and you have more control over your own neural landscape than you might realize.
And it all starts with understanding the power of neuroplasticity.
And the journey starts now.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
See you next time.